Welcome and apologies. I don't think there were any apologies to come through. Minutes from the last meeting. Michelle, over to you.
Yes, so just outstanding actions from the minutes of the last meeting. The first one related to HMICFRS, the Inspectorate, and the Neighbourhood Policing Roadshow update you will be getting after the launch in relation to that, and HMIC is on the agenda, first item, Commissioner. The next one, 28, around out-of-court resolutions. We've been working closely with ACC Griffin and Force colleagues in relation to the out-of-court resolutions and the services that are referred to from those. And there's a paper to the Force Executive Board, I understand, this month. Item 29, drug test on arrest, is pending. There's been some questions provided to the Force, and they're just working through those, so that can be carried forward. And then finally, there's been answers provided by the Force in relation to queries on the neighbourhood policing team final numbers. So those will all be clear next week when we provide an update to the Police and Crime Panel.
Thank you. Any questions for the minutes? Okay, lovely. Okay. On to item number 3 then, which is an update on HMICFRS Peel Inspection Operation Catalyst. Over to you.
So thank you, Commissioner. If we just this is just this, the next steps really around our HMICFRS response under Operation Catalyst. So you can see from there, in May 2024, we went to pick the first PPOG and spoke about what our plans were in relation to the 3 accelerated areas for concern. In September, we updated what we'd done, and the feedback was positive in relation to things that we'd put in place. And we are going in January to talk about what we've, the impact of those changes that we've put in. We've addressed every issue that's been raised, and we just now need to make sure that it's sustained within the organisation, and we've stabilised some of that performance. Performance is good in relation to the areas. So if we look at around investigations, and we look at supervisory updates, victim updates, and investigation updates, we're around 95% compliance for all of those, which is really positive. Mm-hmm. In relation to neighbourhood policing, we've got our new neighbourhood policing model in place, which you're aware of, and we're also looking at the abstractions to make sure that we minimise those as much as possible, so we can keep people in the communities, so they can start to get to know their communities, and the communities get to know them. And then also in relation to the DASU and the Domestic Abuse Support Unit, in terms of the reviews and the risk assessments that we were doing. Since March, we have maintained performance in those in relation to no backlogs, and we've provided all that information to HMICFRS.
Good. Thank you for that update. There's obviously clearly some positive things there. Just, I suppose, as a bit of context around the plan, how do you think that that's been received by HMICFRS?
So the feedback I've had has been positive. So at each stage we've worked with them in terms of what we plan to do, the different measures that we're introducing. We've also worked with the College of Policing and also National Police Chiefs Council around some guidance as well. So anything that we've implemented. So our neighbourhood policing model has been scrutinised externally. So we've got confidence that we're giving the best possible service we can around those.
Mm-hmm. And I suppose in simple context, do you feel that Nottinghamshire Police is heading in the right direction?
Most definitely. I think from that says, I think we've put the things in place. Now we just need to really make sure that we continue to monitor our performance against those measures we've put in place, and make sure that we get them embedded and sustainable within the organisation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you for that. Any questions from anybody else? No? Okay. Item number 4, update on the College of Policing review into Nottinghamshire's police handling of Valdo Callacane case. And this will be Michelle who gives a brief update on this, please.
Yes, well, Commissioner, we reported last time that the College of Policing review that had been commissioned by your predecessor had been paused, and you've heard from the bereaved families and surviving victims, and that is still their wish that pause continues pending the IOPC investigation, so that's still the update.
Lovely, thank you for that. We swiftly move on to item number 4, which is going to be tackling knife crime. It's Chief Inspector Karl Thomas is going to do a presentation, and then there will be questions followed by that presentation. So over to you, Chief Inspector.
Thank you, Commissioner. So my name is Karl Thomas. I'm the Chief Inspector for the City Centre. I'm also the Tactical Lead for Knife Crime for Nottinghamshire Police. That sits under Mr Griffin, who is the Strategic Lead So I feed into him, and I'm responsible for our 4Ps plan, which is centred around preparing, preventing, protect and pursue. So the title of the presentation actually, so I'll just go back, sorry. It is around combating crime through lived experience and community voices in Nottinghamshire. So it's having a clear understanding what your aims are and your vision, Commissioner, and around antisocial behaviour, the VORG, knife crime and serious violence. And that actually fits in with the Chief Constable's pledge around tackling knife crime, serious violence for people in Nottinghamshire. So when we look at our data, this data is actually not that current. The new ONS updated on the 24th of October, so when I submitted this, these figures are slightly outmoded, but nothing has much changed in the last few months. So we've only had an increase of one job in terms of crimes. And so if you think about that, so in terms of the May figures, and then more recently we've only had an increase of 7 incidents, and they centre around robbery. So in terms of tackling knife crime and knife-enabled crimes, we're actually doing very well. In fact, the second best in the region. And then when we talk about nationally, we're way up on the table. So we are tackling knife crime and knife-enabled crime quite effectively.
Yeah.
So the reason that there's a picture on there, and that's about lived experience. So we had an event recently, the Edwards Lane, which was sponsored by your Violence Reduction Partnership. And there was 200 to 300 people there where we had lived experience, where people had been victim of knife crime, and they gave their experience, which resonated with the room. So can I have the next slide, please? So this week is UpScepter. This is the plan on a page, which is very busy, as you can see there. But it just centres around making sure that all our departments within the organisation are fully invested in that week of action. So that's from the proactive knife crime team. So in terms of enforcement, we're one of the very few police services in the country that has a dedicated knife crime team. And we're one of the very few police forces in the country that has a dedicated robbery team stroke acquisitive crime team as well. So what that means is when it comes to getting detections, identifying hotspots and using analytical data, because our officers are living that on a daily basis, they can pick up trends a lot more efficiently. And it means that we can increase our detections, which means the public get a better response from us. So in terms of our approach, it is a multi-agency approach. It's not just the police. I think your own words are, we'll never be able to enforce our way out of knife crime. And that's why we work together very closely with partners in terms of tackling knife crime effectively across Nottinghamshire. So as part of the week of action, we did 25 weapon sweeps. If we go back, if I rewind to November last year, when we did the Scepter week, we only had 59 weapons that were handed in, deposited by the public. And we've been very aggressive in our communication strategy. And then in May, we had 289 weapons were handed in. And most recently, we ran a month surrender scheme for the zombie knives and machetes. And we had a staggering 724 weapons that were handed in. 445 of those were zombie knives or zombie-style weapons. So clearly, our communication strategy is resonating with the public. But just as importantly, our communication and that close working with our partners is having a huge impact, because several of those weapons that were handed into our partners, like the 4Bs, the Kaya Project, Switch Up, and they've passed those weapons on to us. So there's still an issue around trust and confidence in the police and our communities. But what we've found is by working with our partners, they can be the conduit that passes that on. And if you think about that, that sends a message, doesn't it, that lots of people in our communities, particularly young people, are looking to change their lifestyles. And so they're not looking to carry weapons as for protection. They're trying to move away from that culture. So can I have if you just click on the next slide. The next slide is, this was discussed on East Midlands today, so where I cover this in terms of the non-benign.
First this lunchtime, the shocking haul of deadly blades handed in to police. The Nottinghamshire Force has collected well over 400 so-called zombie knives in the run-up to a tougher new law. It's going to mean that people could be jailed for owning any zombie-style weapon. Now, zombie knives were already illegal, but the law's been tightened to include a much wider range of similar weapons, as our social affairs correspondent Jeremy Ball reports.
Yeah, just look at this. It looks like a medieval weapon of war, but this is among around 450 zombie-style knives, which have been handed into Nottinghamshire Police over just a month. Let's have a chat with Chief Inspector Karl Thomas, who's in charge of tackling knife crime. Now, that looks pretty horrific. How would it be used here in Nottinghamshire?
Yeah, a lot of people will carry these knives, either conceal them in their trousers or inside their jacket, and that means they'll be in possession of these items, which is illegal from the 24th of September. And anybody carrying one of these are likely to face a custodial sentence of up to 4 years.
And as we say, over 400 of these things handed in, some of them over police station counters, but a lot of them handed in anonymously. And you think young people are actually choosing to give these up, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Not just young people, but everyone. Lots of people that handed them in. But we've had contact from youth workers, people that just want to change their lifestyle to get these items off the street.
One person handed in over 80 of these knives.
Yeah, that was a retailer, and they clearly, in terms of the compensation scheme, they've decided that they don't want these to be out on the street, and they've done the ethical thing by handing these weapons in.
So how much difference do you think it can make getting this sort of stuff off the streets of Nottinghamshire then?
Well, if you look at that, 445 weapons of this nature, which can cause serious damage to people, that inimical damage devastates lives, not only to victims, to offenders and their families and friends.
The law has changed, hasn't it? So before, that knife would have been illegal because it had a logo on it, a slogan on it, linked to sort of zombie culture. The law has changed to include a lot more weapons, hasn't it?
Absolutely, and the weapon you was holding a short while ago will still have the devastating consequences to a victim that this zombie knife will have. So that was a zombie-style knife, and this is a zombie knife. But the reality is it will still have the inimical impact on the victim.
And this would have been illegal to have until last week?
That's correct, yes, yeah, sadly.
These are all going to be destroyed now, aren't they? Melted down, I gather?
A lot of them are already in the bin, ready to go, to be melted down. But yeah, they'll be off the street and they won't be causing any damage to anyone anytime soon.
Karl Thomas, thanks for joining us, and we'll have more on this tonight at 6:30 on BBC One.
So I think that shows that, like I say, the culture of carrying knives in Nottinghamshire is changing. In fact, on Monday, I think I'm aware that over 100 knives have been handed in at Central Police Station, the old Byron House. So if I move on then, so in terms of, we're not going to enforce our way out of this. So this is definitely about a multi-agency, cohesive approach, and that means working with the VRP in terms of the Violence Reduction Partnership, making sure that we look at problem solving. And what we've looked at in terms of moving forward, we've identified there's a proliferation in domestic incidents where knives are used in the home, and also there's, in terms of threat, risk and harm, in terms of, we've got to be careful with acronyms here, haven't I? USGs, so urban street gangs, particularly young people who are influenced, who feel that they're under pressure. So they're the two areas that we're looking at in terms of November 2025 strategy. So we're already trying to get ahead of the game in terms of moving forward, in terms of planning and trying to combat knife-enabled crime. So in terms of education, we're working with many scholars. So we're working with Nottingham University and also Leicester University, and that's around looking at disproportionality in terms of serious violence and knife crime. And again, that's sponsored by the Violence Reduction Partnership. And then also working with Professor Nichols Drew around less lethal tip knives. So trying to reduce the actual impact when a knife is actually used. But what excites me the most is, if you look at the pictures on the board there, it's working with the 4Bs, Akaya Project, Stone Soup, Ben Kinsella Trust, Switch Up, the many agencies that I could name in terms of partnership and having that cohesive approach to tackling knife crime. So where we can break barriers down, where we can have honest conversations and trying to change the culture around people, young people in particular, carrying weapons, which I think is having a huge impact in the way that we tackle crime in Nottinghamshire. So it's not just about education, it's also about working with, it's about educating our own officers. So we've looked at revamping the training package for frontline officers, which we do for every new recruit, they'll have that, and also existing officers as well. And working with our schools liaison officers, education departments, universities. So we've got a multifaceted approach to tackling knife-enabled crime. And what we've found is, by doing that, we're actually one of the national leads. We had an inspection yesterday by the College of Police and then the national lead, Mr. Stephen Clayman, and he said that our response to knife crime was the best he's seen in terms of an overall package around knife crime. And in terms of our 4-piece plan, which I'll remind everybody about, which is prepare, prevent, protect and pursuing knife-enabled crime, we are seen as the yardstick really that people want to aspire to achieve. So they're going to actually use our model as best practice. So if I just finally finish off, so in terms of that, Commissioner, in terms of the nighttime economy, we've achieved a national award for the Purple Flag, and by doing that, then hopefully we can deliver your action plan and also the Chief Constable's plan of having an outstanding service that we can all be proud of.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you. Got some questions for you, Chief Inspector. So it's well known and documented that those who carry knives are at high risk themselves of being harmed via a knife. How would you describe the actions of the force and partners in what they're doing to educate young people and address this particular issue?
Absolutely. So if we start from school age, we've got school liaison officers that work closely with our education departments, and they will go out to schools, and they're actually based in schools, and they will work with different age groups. But we also want to encourage the education department to be self-efficient. And then actually when we start looking at older people, we're one of the very few police forces in the country that have outreach workers. So we've got a small dedicated team that actually focus on working with your colleges and universities, and that offer is there, and we do that on a regular basis.
Okay, thank you. What is the force doing to engage with young people at risk of involvement in serious violence?
And that's where the police aren't going to solve this, and that's so important. Like I said, we are the national lead when it comes to our approach around our 4-piece plan and that multi-agency cohesive offer that we have. Like I say, working with the Education Light Stone Soup, which is an alternative provision, working with the Kaya Project, the 4Bs, where they can connect and we can link in with them in terms of improving that trust and confidence, but ultimately turns young people and people in general away from knife-enabled crime.
Thank you for that. And if you're a member of the public and you know someone in your area carries a knife, firstly, what should you do? And if you've got somebody as well who wants to stop carrying a knife and they're concerned about any repercussions, what support can we offer as a police force and partners to be able to mitigate against that?
Yeah. So if somebody is carrying a knife, then they can report that to the police. They can do that discreetly if they're fearful of reprisals. So that can be done either call 101, or if it's happening there and then, it can actually be an emergency, and officers will respond to that dynamically. In terms of in terms of the discouraging people and changing their lifestyle, again, that is that partnership approach of working with, I'm not going to say the third sector, but working with charities and our partners that we do on a daily basis, working very closely. And because, like I say, quite often young people will more likely to open up to our partners, which they are doing, than the police. But we still have an offer around outreach workers and our community beat teams as well. In fact, all officers have got a statutory responsibility for this. So it's about engaging and making sure that which we are doing by educating our frontline officers around knife-enabled crime.
Thank you for that one.
And anonymous reporting could also be through Crime Stoppers, I suppose.
Absolutely, yeah.
Lovely. So obviously the knife amnesty was highly successful, and you've alluded to that already. How often will knife amnesties be undertaken?
So in several police stations, we have knife bins on all the time. So weapons can be handed in throughout the year. Right. But twice yearly, we have the SEPTA offer, which is a week of action where we're proactive. And we really make a big push on trying to get people to deposit knives and try and take them out of the communities and out of the streets. So for obvious reasons, where they're not going to cause any harm or any serious injury or even worse. But what we're looking at doing actually is trying to increase that offer. So we can have more police stations with more amnesty bins or surrender bins. There's a slight nuance there, but there's not much difference in it. But what we're finding is, honestly, I cannot believe the amount of knives that have been handed in. And like I said earlier on, we've gone from 59 weapons knives and bladed articles a year ago to 289 in May to 724. So I'm not going to. It's
huge.
I'm not sure. Well, we're clearly trending in the right direction.
Absolutely. And can you tell me more about the week of action against knife crime that will be undertaken this month?
Yeah, so your department, in terms of the violence reduction, are heavily involved in that. So in terms of what we've got, proactive officers, we've had knife archers. I think you visited yourself yesterday in the city centre. We've targeted hotspots. We've got the knife crime team working overtly and covertly. And we've had several arrests in terms of enforcement. The neighbourhood inspectors, every single neighbourhood inspector's come up with a plan for their area, whether that's weapon sweeps, whether that's engaging with the community. We've got schools liaison officers working in the schools, promoting knife crime in terms of obviously trying to deter young people away from that. So like I say, we've got a real big offer around tackling knife-enabled crime, which like I say is actually one of the best.
And I think it's worth noting as well that you've already mentioned it. Steve Clayman, head of Central Specialist Crime Team at the Metropolitan Police, came down yesterday to have a look at the offer that we deliver on knife crime, and was extremely impressed with our relationships with our third sector, or I probably prefer to some of them as potentially the fourth emergency service in many ways, for the information that we receive from them and how we save lives with that. Obviously, what's really important, I think, for the public to hear is that the Metropolitan Police have looked at Nottinghamshire Police and said, actually, we need to go and look at the work that they're doing because they're class leading in what they're doing. How do you feel that visit went, and what did you kind of gain from that?
Yeah, there was lots of agencies that presented that day, from Stone Stoop, the 4Bs, and we had our outreach workers, and we also had some proactive work in terms of knife archers and our officers from the neighbourhood teams out there. So I think we've definitely not got a vacillated approach. We've got a comprehensive approach to tackling knife crime, and like I say, by having that 4Ps plan, which is on an action tracker, so we make sure that nothing is missed. It's almost like running an incident on an Ames inquiry where everything is documented, and we make sure that we evaluate that to make sure that it works. So in terms of us being a template for other police forces to follow, that clearly fills me with pride. It shows, it validates our practices, and it actually means that one of the areas that I'd like us to improve on, which Leicester are doing exceptionally well on, is more of in terms of how they record crime. And I think that we're probably being over-ethical in terms of how we record crime, in terms of knife-enabled, where we will still record a crime even if the knife's not seen. If somebody mentions a knife, then we'll record it as a knife-enabled crime. So the question there is, we need to look at other practices, how things are being recorded. But what I would say, if I can give some confidence around knife crime, in terms of those figures, well, we've had an increase of probably half a dozen incidents. It's very rare that there's serious violence used in those, so that is very low on percentage-wise. So whilst people are making threats with knives, in terms of using serious violence in knives-related incidents, that is really low. Well, it's disproportionately low, if that makes sense. That gives some confidence.
Well, just to say that the feedback is he was so impressed by what he saw that he asked local partners to help lead national strategic efforts to tackle knife crime. So I can confidently say that it was a really good visit. I attended as well, and it really held Nottinghamshire in a really good light in terms of the work that it's doing on knife crime. And we are going to be looked at from a national perspective, so that is really good.
Yeah, absolutely. Really, I mean, I took over this role in May, so I have to give thanks to the predecessor, get my words out, Catherine Craner, who set those templates up. And we're just going to continue with that and try and improve them even further. But definitely, we are a national lead, and I think Mr. Clayman described our overall practices as exceptional.
Yeah. So I think that's a really good news story. We do have two questions. One from Sulayman Cham.
Yeah, my name is Sulayman Cham. I'm a victim of knife crime, living in Radford. I'm asking the Chief Constable Police how they can tackle with the knife crime, and how can the police work with the community to make sure people are safe within these knife crimes.
Yeah, I think, like they say, that comprehensive model that we've got there, and working with partners, being proactive as well when required, and problem solving. We've got a problem solving team that work along knife crime as well.
Just from my perspective, I think Chief Inspector Thomas has spoken about all the different elements that we're doing, and I think it's really important that we recognise that it's not something that we're just going to force our way out of. We need to do that on occasions, but there's the other elements as well, and he's articulated, really well some of the partnership working that's really seeing positive results. It was obviously recognised yesterday, but the work with the young people and in the time with that, our schools officers take to explain and try and show people the effects of knife crime is really important. So it's that holistic approach that's really critical. I mean, we can't just do it in one sort of silo. We need to make sure we combine everything together.
What I will say is really positive is obviously knife crime blights our communities and has quite a detrimental impact on the perception of crime and the feeling of crime and the threat of crime, particularly to a lot of young people. And it's just really positive to hear the work that's been done and how it's being recognised as really high standard work with great results. But it also demonstrates, and what I learnt yesterday was the relationships we have with our partners and how effective that is and how that is really working. So it's really, really positive, and I think it's really positive for our communities to hear that. There's one more question on the knife crime, and that's from Rich Lane.
Hello, my name is Rich Lane. I work for It's in Nottingham, the Business Improvement District in Nottinghamshire, and my role is around operations and head of business crime. My question for the Chief Constable around knife crime is, we're getting lots of reports from clubs and businesses that deal with the nighttime economy around students now coming armed with weapons to clubs. How are we going to combat that?
I know Richard Lane very well. I work very closely with him. It's in Nottingham and the bid, particularly around retail crime. So in terms of tackling that, it's very simple really. We have monthly meetings with Pub Watch. We work very closely with the clubs and bars. We do inspections on a regular basis. Our licensing team go out on a regular basis as well. But the onus really can go back onto the clubs. So this is not just about a police issue. They have the capacity and the authority to search people. They can use knife archers as well. Quite often clubs don't want to do that because of the optics. But they can take responsibility as well, and we will support wherever we can. But like I say, they have the right to refuse entry if they so wish. But we are there on a regular basis in terms of our nighttime economy offer. And we make sure that we go out there, do early intervention, liaise with the clubs and the bars, get a feel in terms of pay setting for the evening, liaising with the clubs. And we've got a very, very strong relationship with like I say, with Pub Watch, and we present there on a monthly basis.
That's great. Thank you very much. On the knife crime agenda, then I will close off on that. And can I thank you for your input? Really interesting, and a lot of really good news stories in that. Thank you. Okay, so on to item number 6, and this is improving quality and effectiveness of police response. Presentation from Superintendent Allardice. So over to you, Superintendent.
Thanks, Commissioner. Hi, everybody. Simon Allardice, I'm a Police Superintendent, Head of Contact Management, so that means I'm in charge of the Police Control Room. So I've prepared some slides to show you today. Can I those, please? So a couple of key headlines. So HMICFRS have been into a number of forces, 25 reports published so far about their peel inspections, which look at the effectiveness and efficiency of police forces. The area of responding to public in those peel reports relates specifically to the control room. Of those 25 published reports, only 9 forces were deemed to be adequate or good, and I'm pleased to say that we were in that top 9. We were graded as adequate. So we're not complacent, much more to do, but it shows where we are in terms of the national picture of responding to the public. In terms of our 909 call performance, very proud to say that the last few months have been the best ever. So our 909 call performance, colleagues might be aware, is published on the police.uk website, so the public can see that and access it. And that shows the percentage of our 909 calls answered within 10 seconds. And the last 3 months have been the best months on record as far back as 2021, which we're really, really proud of. We worked very hard to achieve. One of the other things that was important for us as well is that whilst we've improved that 909 performance, we continue to maintain a really good level of performance around our 101, so non-emergency call performance. And as the slide shows there, we're really proud of the fact that we've exceeded our target on every month of the last year. So the target there is 80% of calls answered within 60 seconds, and as I say, every month of the previous year. But importantly, with answering the phone, it's really important to me that we have high standards and a commitment to the quality of the calls, not just the quantity of the calls. We want to answer them quickly, of course, but we want to do that and make sure we're giving people an outstanding service. So the things we think about in terms of the quality of the calls is our Thrive assessment. So Thrive is threat, harm, risk, investigation, vulnerability and engagement considerations. We do that for every single call into the control room, and we measure the level of compliance to ensure that our operators are doing that on all calls that it's appropriate and relevant. And what we know, and we track on a monthly basis, is that more than 95% of the calls, that looks exactly as it needs to look. The other thing we consider around quality is something that we call Operation Solace, and that relates to giving crime prevention advice and evidence preservation advice. And again, we've got some really good performance, over 90%, which I'll show in the subsequent slides. So thank you, Dan. Next slide. So this is just a visual representation of our 999 call performance. So what this shows is for every month going back to November 2021, what percentage of our calls did we answer in less than 10 seconds, which is the national target. And what this shows is that, in fact, we'd only met the national target on 2 occasions prior to the last few months. So one of them was in January 22, one of them was in February of 24. And actually what we can see on the far right hand side is that 89.6%, so just missed it by 0.4, and in the last 2 months we've exceeded it for the first time ever on 2 consecutive months. And in fact, yesterday we received the October data. This chart I think is September, and we've done it for October as well. So really, really proud of the fact we've improved that 999 call performance. Thank you, Dan. So this is our 101 call performance, so non-emergencies. The red line represents the 80% within 60 seconds, which is our ambitious target. It's one of the highest targets nationally, and we've managed to not only achieve and exceed that on every month, but importantly, we've also done that in the months whilst improving 999 call performance. So something, again, we're also very proud of. Thank you, Dan. So Operation Solace, as I say, this covers an area that was of interest to HMICFRS, specifically around giving crime prevention advice and evidence preservation advice at the time of call. So we started this in the autumn of 2022. The graph sort of represents the upward trajectory in terms of the compliance across the 5 groups in the control room. There's 5 teams that work on a 24/7, 365 basis. And listed there in the top left is the incident types where we give that advice. So we measure against all those incident types, is there evidence that we've given appropriate advice around preserving evidence, but also crime prevention to make people feel safe and hopefully prevent them being victims again in the future. So the chart shows the upward trajectory from sort of the early part of 2023 up to the summer of 23, where we've achieved that high level of compliance. But actually, as I said earlier, we're not complacent. We really, really want to have an exceptionally high level of compliance consistently across all teams. And I was very proud that in August of this year, for the first time ever, all 5 of my teams achieved 90%. 4 of the 5 have continued that in September, and it's an area of continued focus. So again, definitely going in the right direction and a key priority for us. Thank you, Dan. The next thing I wanted to touch on is that we recognise that we want to have as broad an offer for the public as possible. If the public need a service from Nottinghamshire Police, we want to be there for them. We want to be accessible. We want to make that as easy and smooth as it possibly can be. So the variety of channels and opportunities and ways that people can report to the police is really important. One of the areas that we've grown significantly over recent years is our digital offer. So people can call 101, they can call 999, they can go into front counters, as has traditionally been the case, but importantly, they can also now report online. So if you go onto the Nottinghamshire Police website, you'll have a screen which is very similar to that on the top left. That's a screenshot. And if you click crime, it will take you to an online crime reporting tool. If you click on any of the incident types, it will take you to a bespoke guide where you can input those details, whether that's via a mobile phone, an iPad, a tablet, or indeed a laptop or a more traditional computer, and report your incident online. And what we're finding is that that is increasingly an appealing choice for members of the public. What the bar chart at the bottom shows is the growth in this method of reporting over the last few years. So the 2 months I've highlighted there, July of 2022, 632 reports through digital channels. By July of 2024, so 2 years later, 3,200. So it shows that substantial growth in that digital reporting routes, which we feel really is a positive offer for the public to have those different ways to come into policing. The other opportunity that the digital channels presents to us is, whilst a member of my control room staff can only take 1 telephone call at a time, actually they can manage multiple live chats at a time, because often they'll ask information from the person reporting, And whilst they're getting the answers and typing their reply, we can be engaging with another member of the public and do some simultaneous activity. So it helps us with efficiency, helps us with getting the best out of our staff, helps us with, again, making sure we answer the phones quickly and promptly. Thanks very much. And next one.
Sorry, Commissioner, can I just ask
Sorry.
a question on that last graph?
Of course.
So Superintendent, when you saw that increase in online reporting, did you see a corresponding decrease in telephone calls, or was it an increase in overall demand as a result?
Yes, so we have seen a decrease in telephone calls, and indeed that's the national picture.
Yes.
It's quite similar to this. So an increase in the digital offer and the digital uptake that corresponds with some reductions in 101 and 909 call volumes.
And you can track that?
Yes, yeah. It's not an exact correlation, but there is a simultaneous reduction in calls, increase in digital. Yes, thank you. And then, Commissioner, I just wanted to highlight some other key bits of work that we're moving on. So, following the recent Peel inspection and some areas that we identified we wanted to improve, we got in touch with the College of Policing and said, where is good practice in terms of responding to the public? We're really keen to understand where colleagues around the country are getting it right in your judgment. And the college kindly agreed to come in the late summer, spend a day with us, look at all the different ways of the way our control room operated, and then they've given us a report of some areas of recommendation, identifying where we're doing good practice, but also identifying where colleagues around the country have got some practice that might be interesting for us to explore. So as a consequence of that, we've got a number of recommendations. I've established a new governance process to make sure that we do that in a timely manner and prioritise those appropriately, that we call our Contact Management Continuous Improvement Board. That sits on a monthly basis, of which I'm the chair. Already we've been to visit Norfolk and Cumbria Police, which was cited as good practice, and yesterday we visited Humberside Police. Cumbria and Humberside are the only two forces to get good nationally, so we've already been there, seen some good stuff that we're going to be exploring over the coming months. Two key bits of work. So one is the reviewing our instant grading policy. So we have a policy which dictates that when we receive a call from a member of the public, we first establish, is this a matter for the police? Are we the right and most appropriate agency to deal with this matter? If we decide that we are, then we decide what sort of incident does this need to be. And it might be an emergency incident or an urgent incident to deal with within an hour or 2 hours, or it might be what we would call a standard incident that we deal with within a 24-hour basis, or indeed something we might be able to deal with by the telephone. The policy which influences which of those categories calls are placed into is not set nationally. There's a bit of inconsistency nationally. We're in a really good place in Nottinghamshire, but we've found some interesting practice in Cumbria and Humberside that we're going to explore over the coming months. And what I envisage will happen from that is some instance which today we place as a grade 2, 2-hour response, we may actually say offering an appointment to that person is more appropriate. And as a consequence, our busy response teams are more available and have more capacity to get to emergencies more quickly. And we should see, hopefully, our response times improve as a consequence. And then the last part is just really to highlight some really good work that's going on by my colleague, Superintendent James Woolley. He's developed a really comprehensive action plan around response policing, and clearly both sides of the radio are important for that. So we've got to have really effective dispatch in the control room, working closely with response PCs and sergeants on the ground to get to the public as quickly as we can. So we're working closely with him on that. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Really interesting. I think what's obvious about that is that we have some really, really good figures on paper. And I think what's kind of interesting around that really is how is Nottinghamshire doing it differently to other people and other forces to create that sort of performance level that you're describing there?
Yes. So there's a few things that we do that not every force does. So a couple of those, which I think work particularly well, is that our non-emergency call offer is a real team effort across the control room. So it used to be the case that if somebody called into Nottinghamshire Police, all of the calls, emergency and non-emergency, went to our call handlers. What we have now is that some calls will be deflected to our switchboard. When people call on the non-emergency line, they'll listen to a pre-recorded message which will say, if you want to have an update for your investigation, or report lost property, or report an abandoned vehicle, and a number of other options, press certain buttons, and that will deflect some of that demand to our front counter staff. So actually, our front counter teams, if they are available and not dealing with a member of the public that's walked into the front counter, actually are also taking some of our calls. And over the months of the year, that adds up to many, many thousands of calls. And as a consequence, the availability of our emergency call handlers in the control room is increased. The other thing that we do is our dispatchers, so that the colleagues who are trained to send the officers and PCSOs to the jobs over the radio are omnicompetent. That's not the case in every force. And what that means is if they're not busy dispatching colleagues to jobs, which is not always the case, it's a bit of peaks and troughs, they are also available to take calls. So that sort of team effort of everybody putting their weight, capacity and productivity behind answering calls as quickly as we possibly can has really allowed us to be one of the best performing forces in the country.
Very interesting, thank you for that. How is the force promoting and enabling online reporting for crime and antisocial behaviour?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. I think the first thing is we want to make sure we've got an attractive and appealing offer. So if you go onto the Nottinghamshire Police website, you're immediately met with how you can report online, which takes you to the tab that I showed in the slides, and there's also a live chat bubble that you can click on and takes you to a live chat. So if anybody visits our website, it's very apparent that those offers are available. To increase awareness of that, we work closely with our communications team to promote the reporting of those routes, so whether that's by press releases or social media campaigns in particular, where we will encourage people to report digitally. The other thing that we do is the pre-recorded message when people call on the non-emergency line. That first prompt, before we give people their options, is if you'd like to report a crime, which is not an emergency, the quickest way to do that is to do that online. And sometimes what we find is that people take us up on that offer, put their phone down, do it online, and that really helps us in that offer of answering calls for things that really do need to be by telephone.
I think, Commissioner, the Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner had a question around an app, didn't you, whether an app had been looked at?
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of people, if they are a victim of any form of crime,
Yes.
they're in a state of shock,
Yes.
fear, and if they wait until the following day, they may not report it. But if we had an app on the phone, on smartphones, and once that crime happens, they could actually log into the app and report it straight away.
Yes.
Because we're not getting a lot of people reporting.
Yes. Well, that's certainly something we can explore. So to have a reporting app so people can do it from their smartphones at the time. Yeah.
Because even like online, sometimes it's very time consuming.
Yes.
And then you've got people who have literacy problems as well.
Yes.
So it's looking at something which is a lot effective and easier.
Yeah, well, I think I can see why that would be appealing, and as I said a moment ago, I think the more routes and the greater ease for that variety of routes, the more public are going to report to us, and of course the more we know, the more we can report and respond to and give people a good service, but also importantly, it feeds our understanding of crime and intelligence that's going on in communities, so we can hopefully put the right people in the right place to prevent the crimes of tomorrow. So if it's okay, I'll take that away. What I propose to do is go back to the Police Chiefs Council, the national body. We've got a lead for contact management, and understand if any forces already have an app in place that we might be able to understand good practice we can adopt in Nottinghamshire. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, thank you. Grade 1 response times have been falling steadily over the previous year. What are the reasons for this, and what is the force doing to address?
Yeah, thank you. So, I mean, my understanding of the grade 1 response times is that they fluctuate between 72 and 74%. So it's worth just saying that grade 1 is what we call an emergency incident. So that's where our call handlers are saying this is an emergency, it's happening now, we need to get officers there as quickly as we physically can. The mechanics of creating an emergency incident are such that as soon as the call handler starts creating an incident, it's visible to the dispatchers, who will start immediately identifying resources, moving resources towards the right location, and briefing officers as they are travelling, so we get the best possible response to the public. Our target times in respect of those is 15 minutes for an urban area, 20 minutes for a rural area. And as I say, our performance over the last 12 months has fluctuated between 72 and 74%. There are a number of factors that relate to that, largely around officer availability, when the incidents come in, travel time, vehicle availability, and in recognising the sort of range of contributory factors that can feed into an effective and efficient police emergency response. James Woolley, as I say, is the new superintendent in charge of the response portfolio, has drawn all of those threads together into this newly formed, first time we've had one in my service, a response action plan which addresses all of those points. I mean, actually, I'm quite proud of the fact that through a very busy summer period, we haven't seen a deterioration in our response times as we have in previous years. So it has been the case years ago that during the summer we'd have a peak period of leave, as is traditional in many sort of agencies and public sector agencies, as well as a peak in demand. Well, in policing, we're very proactive in seeing that coming, and we're committed to ensuring that our service to the public ideally improves continually, but certainly is sustained during the summer period. During this summer, we developed and launched a new operation called Operation Focus, and what that entailed was We kept a very close eye on our response times, a very close eye on the amount of outstanding demand and members of the public waiting for a service from Nottinghamshire Police. And on occasions where we found that to be high or increasing rather than decreasing, we pulled together a meeting that was chaired at a gold level by a chief officer and mobilised officers from across the force to support. And on a number of days and weeks, we had officers from training schools, special constables, from our prevention hub, as well as detectives supporting those that would ordinarily be responding to incidents in uniform. And what that meant that the members of the public weren't waiting any longer, despite those high spikes in demand. And we were able to sustain that performance within the 72 to 74% bracket throughout the summer. But it's an area we want to continue to improve.
Thanks for that. And how does the force assure itself that our community hubs and front counters are located in the right areas? What evidence is used to inform these decisions?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So in terms of where the front counters are, just so everybody's aware of how they can find those, if you go onto the Nottinghamshire Police website, on the front page it will be find your local area, and you can either put in an address, a place, a postcode, or you can click the use my location button and that will take you to what's the local offer. It doesn't just take you to the closest station but the closest stations, and it will list their opening hours and the services available. There's also a section on the Force website at the bottom left corner where people can click that's called Find My Police Station, and again if you click that it takes you to the options that I've just described. In terms of where we have the stations, well we try to have some visibility in as many communities as possible. Sadly we don't have the same number of police stations and front counters as we had years ago, but what we try and ensure is that we have the same positive policing offer that we've always had. In terms of how we determine where those stations are, Sophie Barker, that leads on that area, is a very experienced colleague with over 30 years of service to the Nottinghamshire Police and absolutely is an expert in first contact and front counters. And what Sophie will describe in her meetings with me is that we carefully look at where do we have our highest population areas, where do we have our highest footfall areas, where are the community groups, elected members, MPs and councillors telling us they would like counters. And then for the areas we do have the counters, we monitor closely the footfall through the door, the number of incidents created, as well as in some areas we've had a virtual offer of front counters. So Eastwood, for example, used to have a front counter at one point and then it had a virtual front counter. And then other areas such as Carlton used to have a station and that transitioned to a partnership offer. And then there was what we call the yellow phone, where even though there's not a counter, there's a phone that directs you directly to the control room. And we track all of the usage of those so that we can tailor our offer to the public. So a great example is the opening offer at the Oxclose Lane Police Station was amended as a consequence of exactly that data that's carefully tracked.
Thank you. I've got two questions for you now. I'll just read this one out because I think they're going to be very similar. Again from Rich Lane, who's already spoken. A lot of retailers feel that they report crimes and they don't hear back from the police. How can we improve this in the future? So just hold that while we just go to Martin from Snenton, who's talking about providing feedback to retailers as well.
It is only the question that we have from Rich Lane, just the one that you read.
Oh, is that it?
Anyway. Yeah.
Okay, right.
Hello, my name is Rich Lane. I work for It's in Nottingham, the Business Improvement District in Nottinghamshire, and my role is around operations and head of business crime. My question for the Chief Constable around the improving the effectiveness of the police response to retail, and specifically retail theft, is that a lot of retailers feel that they report crimes and then don't hear back from the police. How can we improve this in the future?
Yeah, so I think firstly it's a really good question because it absolutely is a very reasonable expectation from any member of the public or business that if they report something, they hear back from us. Absolutely. So I'm disappointed to hear that has been the experience of some members of the public, and I would invite, if there's an opportunity for the person that sent the question, I'm happy to meet with them and understand any specific examples so I can explore those and get back in touch with people that may have been let down. That shouldn't have happened. What should happen is that in every case when a member of the public and indeed a business reports a crime to the police, they should get an update of what the police response is going to be. Now that will vary depending on the specific circumstances of a crime, the solvability factors we may call it, the opportunities to investigate and bring somebody to justice. And of all of our control room staff and what we call our CRIM team, Contact Resolution Incident Management team, who do telephone-based investigations, are trained to do, is assess, is there an opportunity to solve this crime? Is there an opportunity to bring somebody to justice for this crime? That will consider factors like witnesses, CCTV, descriptions, whether a suspect was seen or not, potential opportunities for forensic evidence, and that should all be explained to the person at the point that we recontact them after the incident has happened. A crime will be appropriately reported and recorded, and then the quality of that investigation is overviewed by supervisors prior to it to be filed. So we shouldn't have any crimes such as the gentleman's described, where you report a crime and you don't hear back from the police. So yeah, I'm sorry to hear that has been some people's experiences. I'd be very keen to hear about any of those, because our absolute standard is we always get back to people, we tell them what's happening and why, and we deliver the best service we can. Of course, in some cases that will be to explain why there is nothing more we can do, but we should always try and give the best possible service in explaining that, so that people feel reassured that even if there aren't any perhaps solvability factors in that particular job, their reporting it has helped us understand what's going on in communities and will help us inform where we direct police resources to try and prevent future crime and bring people to justice.
I think we can probably put you in touch with Rich Lane, who's part of the bid, and he can perhaps explore that a little bit, and that might be some of the feedback that he's getting from some of the retailers, so just out of interest.
It might also, sorry, excuse me, might also be an opportunity for us to talk about some of the initiatives we're doing with some of the retailers around some specific operations in certain areas we've started to see some real success with. So similar to the work around knife crime, you know, working with partners as well to see what else we can do to focus on particular offenders and try and divert them away from that type of behaviour.
Thank you for that. Are there any further questions?
I'll take it outside of the meeting because I'm conscious of time, but just around the workforce.
Angela? Okay, so just to say thanks for that. Some really positive messages coming from Nottinghamshire Police with that, and it fills me with confidence that we're at 90% on most of our responses, and the public should feel confident that if they ring Nottinghamshire Police, they'll get a response. So that's the end now of the public session, so I will close off. Thank you.